back. We're back. See who's
Great,
first.
great.
I bet Sue is first. Who do you think is going to be first?
It's often Sue. Often Sue.
It is very often Sue.
Could be Valerie.
Let's see. So far, this is 0 on the live. 0 on the live. How long is it going to take? Mo comes in first.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mo who has a question this week.
Oh.
So Mo wasn't messing around.
That's why she's first.
Mm-hmm.
Super excited. Oh, did you it won't matter if you can or not. You don't know if you'll be able to. You don't know what your travel plans are going to be next week.
No, I don't.
Yeah. So, but Zach will be good and I'll be good. So either way, we'll be fine. Yeah, because my plan is going to be, I've got the main already done for Sunday, and then we'll just do the follow-up Monday, and then we'll just be done for the whole holiday. We'll take the whole week off after that.
Yeah, I'm sorry I don't know that. It's just one of many things that is up in the air right now.
Not a problem. It's not a problem at all.
Great.
Not a problem.
Great.
Happy to do it. Happy to do it.
Happy to do it. Okay, well, I'm ready to hit record.
Okay. Rumble in the Kitchen, you missed a real good pregame. Make sure you tune in on Wednesday.
No.
To hear that. Are you familiar with pork chop sandwiches?
Gross.
It was a big topic. Big topic.
Don't get excited.
Conversation.
Don't get excited, Rumble.
All right.
Not get excited.
I'm going to hit record.
Okay. I am recording. Check,
right.
check. A test. A check. Great.
All right. Let's do a little clappity clap. 1, 2, 3. Yahtzee.
Okay.
That's it's great.
Here we go. All right. Ahoy, friends. You're listening to the Friday follow-up for season 17, episode 21, catching up with Dr. Jackson when Bob connected with Dr. Nikki Jackson to further discuss Chris Bynum's case. We are sans Zach today, but we have plenty to talk about. Before we get into all of that, do we have any housekeeping?
The only thing off the top of my head right now is holiday schedule. For you guys know, obviously, for those that celebrate Christmas, it's coming up on that time for us, and we got a lot of travel and things like that and some family time. So I just want to let you guys know what the schedule is going to be. So here's the plan. There is going to be an episode on Sunday in 2 days, which I'm super excited about. We actually have a list. I'll talk a little bit about the end. We have a listener on the air with me for Sunday's episode. And then we are going to go ahead and record that follow-up on Monday. It may be me and Zach, possibly JV. We're not sure what her schedule is going to be like. But so that will that follow-up will air on Friday, which I believe is the day after Christmas. So this coming week, there's going to be an episode Sunday before Christmas, and then there'll be a follow-up that's going to drop after Christmas. And then we'll be off for a week after that. So now it seems a little weird because it seems like we're working through Christmas and then taking the week after off, but it's just because of the way the recording and the publishing schedules work. We're actually going to be off during the holiday time for us. So just want to let you guys be aware of that. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and just move right into this episode. There's not a lot of new information, but some. I mean, Dr. Jackson did have a couple insights that I don't think any of us realized, certainly that I didn't realize. And then other than obviously the very sad announcement at the end about Tasha's unfortunate passing.
Did not, and you did not tell me that was coming. I don't know if Zach knew, but I did not know that was coming. I was totally taken aback.
Oh my God, I didn't realize I didn't tell you that.
No, you didn't tell me. My heart stopped.
Yeah, it must have been Zach. I must have talked to Zach after the air. Yeah, it's and I didn't know, Tasha would communicate with me quite frequently throughout the process. She was always just very thankful, and never really had anything that she needed from me, but was just always commenting to me about the episodes and the things she was learning. And I just hadn't heard from her for a little bit, and then Nikki told me that and same thing with her, and then she told me that she had reached out to her husband, and that's when she found out as well. But yeah, it's obviously incredibly sad. I feel good about the fact that I know from my communication with her and Dr. Jackson's too, that she was the thing that she always stressed to me, that she was always telling me she was so thankful for, was that we, in a very public way, spoke about her mother like a human being who mattered. And that was a really big deal to Tasha because, she said that no one has ever done that before. And that was and that's I'm not just like trying to like pat myself on the back for that, because that was in large part to do with all of you in the audience too, because she didn't really post or anything. She did a couple times when she first got in there when the season started. But she was in our groups, like she was watching the conversations and she was listening to all the episodes and listening to the questions people were asking. And that's one thing that she was always commenting about to me, was it was just so heartwarming to her to see like people looking at her mother as more than just a victim or more than someone who had substance problems, um, but as a human being and a mother, and the way she would always put it, as someone who as a person who mattered in this world. So that's a big thank you to all of you guys for, obviously, as sad as it is that we've lost Tasha, that she did at least have that.
Absolutely. Well, I thought, and I really liked what Dr. Jackson said about the idea of her hopefully being able to reconnect in some way
Yes.
with her mom, and that how painful the living with no answers can be, and that you hope that you get some peace from having to walk through life with those big question marks, and that it's that's really profound.
Yeah, I agree very much. Um, and we'll go ahead and move on from that. Obviously, there's not much more to say about it
Sure.
other than how tragic it is, and that Tasha will definitely be missed. And let's get into more of the case related material.
Sure.
And first, I guess first things first. What were your thoughts? What are your takeaways from the conversation?
Well, I definitely had, I mean, I think my strongest kind of "What did I just hear?" reaction was shared by Emmett, who also posted essentially the same thing, that it just blew his mind that, in his words, the homicide capital of America didn't have a homicide unit.
Yeah,
I don't
me
know if
too.
that, yeah, I mean, I couldn't even, I had to listen, I had to go back and listen again. I was like, "Wait a minute, what?
Yeah, and I
How
don't
is
know
this
how
possible?"
that works, but when she said that, I was like in real time, like while I was in conversation, thinking like it did seem a little strange, like reading through like the police reports and the testimonies, like how people got notified and who was there. Like, one of the detectives was like, "Well, I was patrolling over here and I was in the neighborhood here when I went," as opposed to what we normally see is, the homicide detective got a call at home in the middle of the night and had to get up and come in and start investigating.
Right.
So, and I wonder, it's like, is there a world? I don't know. I've never heard of that, so I don't know if it seems very odd. But, like, is it, maybe it's something like there's just so many murders that they just have to have so many detectives that they're just,
Also
they're,
patrolling
yeah, where
the
they're, like,
area?
wearing many hats, because usually you see, like, I know, like, in the fire service, it was like this, like, in a smaller department, like my department, you had to wear many hats, right? So I was, like, the company officer, I was there fighting fires, I also had to be a command officer at times, and I was also the arson investigator, so, if we got, so, like, it would be, you get a call in the middle of the night when I'm on duty, and we go and I take my crew and we go in and we fight the fire. When the fire is out, then it's all right. Now switch hats. Now I'm the arson investigator. Now I'm going to investigate. Whereas like a bigger department would have like the arson investigation team would come in and they would handle that bit, where we were too small to have that. And it's like, but then do you get so big to where you're just, now you got to go back to the other way?
Well, I guess that's what I mean. What you describe is very specific in terms of you and arson investigation, but it wasn't like every other day you had to stop being a
Right.
chief or stopping a firefighter to be an arson. I guess I'm just hard pressed to understand how those both of those things could ever be served simultaneously without both of them suffering greatly. How are you
I
working on
agree. Yeah.
solving a murder when you're also doing a beat work where ostensibly, like, on the surface, I like the idea of beat cops getting to know the neighborhood and being, I mean, we've been given exactly 0 reason to believe that beat cops in Gary, Indiana were looking out for their communities, but
Right.
on paper, the idea of being around and in the neighborhood and knowing people and, creating a sense of like, "Oh, you're not just some guy who just showed up out of nowhere that I don't know from Adam, blah, blah, blah." But given everything we know leading up to this point, it's very hard to have a non-cynical point of view about the idea that you would be both patrolling and solving a murder, and there are murders happening all the time, and somehow also, by the way, this wasn't investigated properly. Like, it feels like all of
Seems
those
like
things
there's a
go together,
crossover
and it's
there.
not a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly is. I can't imagine a world where it's like an efficient model.
Right. I
Like I'm
guess I
trying
would love
it
more information on that. I guess that's yeah. I guess I
yeah,
feel like I wish I better knew that the facts of that.
and can yeah, and kind of what I was getting at was too almost like from like a budgetary perspective, was what I'm saying. Like, does there come a point where it flips the other way, where it's like in our department, you couldn't justify having a full-time arson investigator because you might be investigating an arson once a week or
Right.
once every other week. So it doesn't make sense. And
Right.
then the bigger departments that have a lot more of that going on, you have a dedicated arson team. Like, is there a world where like budget-wise where it's like, well, we only have this much budget, we need a million arsons investigated, and we don't have enough firefighters, so we have to double them up, where it's like not saying like that's the best way to do it, but
Yeah.
like I wonder if like it's something I don't know.
I mean,
I'm
I
just
think that
speculating. The
I
whole
think
thing's weird.
anything feels possible to me, and I
Yeah.
understand. I don't. I mean, I'm not so disconnected from the way, and I will credit, by the way, Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh in large part for really helping me better understand what like limitations there are in departments as budgets are set forward. And it's very easy to get cynical about the idea of like, oh, cops just love to clock overtime and all that, but
Yeah.
I also know people that I like and trust who are working with law enforcement and are very
Mhm.
aware of where the shortages are and very aware that there are even good cops who are like, I know I'm not doing as good of a job as I could because I'm lacking
Right.
15 resources that would help me do my job. So I recognize that you're right. I mean, there really could be a situation where there are things that happen that are just like because there's no money, there's no infrastructure, there's no support. But unfortunately, then you see stuff like this happen and it doesn't it
It's
doesn't make you
something
want
you
to
could
pour money into the department either. You know what I
right.
mean?
Yeah, and it seems like something like maybe there's a world where you could make that work, but when you throw in a bunch of corrupt cops on top of it in
Yeah,
a culture of corruption, which there certainly was at this time in history in Gary, it's just a recipe for disaster because I think you also lose all elements of accountability. Like there's
sure.
too much happening. I think of it like you can almost like liken it to like the world of a public defender. Great attorney, super skilled attorney, and you throw 150 cases in their lap a week, and they're like,
Impossible.
and then you start looking, well, you're a shitty attorney. Like they're not a shitty attorney. They just like, how can you possibly expect them to give their full attention to any one thing? And it's but then if you put a public defender in that same position that's also like, "Oh, by the way, also, I don't give a shit if I do a good job."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
a real
that's what it feels
cocktail
like
of
in Gary. It's
disaster.
like they're so and there's nobody to account for what they're doing. There's not, it's just an overall bad situation that seemed like it got a whole lot worse when I found out that there wasn't a homicide unit.
Yeah, yeah, that was crazy. Um, I appreciated Dr. Jackson calling out to this idea of him of Chris like wandering around the precinct and
Yeah.
then rapping on somebody's door like, "Well, I've had some time to
She
just
brought up
sit with
so many
walk around with my thoughts." And like that does seem like, "Wait, what?"
yeah, she brought up so many like good, very practical points you didn't think like I'm always so caught up in like details that I feel like I miss some of them. Like, that was one of the ones, like, I remember thinking it was weird, but when you really think about it, like, why would somebody who's been charged with murder be allowed to just walk over and just knock on a door like, "Hey, guys, I'll be right back. I'm gonna go check on
Yeah.
Detective Donald." Like,
Yeah.
that couldn't happen. And also the reading of the confession, I hadn't really thought about, and I'm
Yeah.
still
Well,
racking my brain
I
on
will
that.
say we have a lot of, feedback on that. So,
Okay.
I think we do have some listener contributions that might be helpful on that, because that to me also like, that was one where I understood the confusion, but I just thought well, also, I've not seen the video, so
Right.
I don't really know how odd it is because I don't know, you guys were trying to describe the perspective and like the distance of the camera and what kind of, I don't know if it was like an iPhone, then you can be a lot closer to a phone, but it feels like you're really far away because of the way the lens works.
Yeah,
So I don't
so
know.
that I need to check and see. So the problem is that, I asked for permission to share the audio from the video
Mhm.
and was granted that permission to do that. I did not, it wasn't that I was told you can't share the video. but I didn't ask. And
Right.
so I need to, because that's not, like I'm getting that from someone else. So I have to check that out. Because I would like for you guys to see the video because that obviously is a limitation. But if I can kind of describe it to you, it it would be as though like if you had your phone set on like a coffee table
Mhm.
and then you're maybe 3 or 4 feet away from it standing up, so it's kind of shooting up at an angle at
Mhm.
you,
Mhm.
and you can kind of so but it's a ways away, and and then you can see like you can tell it seems to me like for sure that he's reading off of something, and you could hear
Yeah,
that
I would
it
say there's
sounds
no way. In my mind, there's no way he's not reading.
right. But what I hadn't considered was what does he read? Because the affidavit, what seems to be the script, is written in cursive. It's very difficult to read. Like I had to type it out for in the script to read it to make sure I got everything right when I was reading it into the podcast. Because it's
Mhm.
just, cursive just not the easiest to read. Everybody's got their own little style too and how they write. So there's a lot of like, wait, what does that say type of thing?
Mhm.
And so like I can't imagine. And I had never thought about it, but when Nikki was like, well, how is he like? She agrees. It looks and sounds like he's reading, but like, how, like, is he reading that very small cursive handwritten note from
Right.
3 feet away?
It seems like it was probably well, let's go through what some of the suggestions are. I see right now, in the chat, Girl Soul 11 said, "What could it be a laptop that he's reading off?" So it's not a phone camera, it's a laptop camera, and, like, maybe right underneath the camera is, like, the typed out text of the affidavit. Does
Yeah,
that
and so
You've seen it, so does that seem plausible?
maybe, but the affidavit is handwritten.
Yeah, but somebody could have taken the affidavit and
So
typed it
it's
out.
possible. And I'm thinking in practical terms, like when I've done this. So I carry whenever I'm going to interview a witness that I think could result in an affidavit, I carry my iPad and I have a mobile printer. So I can literally type out an affidavit and then print it right there,
Mhm.
have them sign it, notarize, boom, boom, boom. But that's not typical. We talked about this in the pregame. My insistence on efficiency when it comes to all the steps that I'm doing, right?
Right.
Um, so I definitely could see a situation now that we're thinking about that. That's a good point. Was it Girl Scout in the chat had mentioned that, or Girl Soul?
Girl soul.
Um, I could see a world where it's like, okay, well, tell me, like, dictate to me what you want the affidavit to say. They type it out on a computer as they're saying it, and they record it, but they don't have a printer. So they're like, okay, well, let's find something. Let's write this out and sign it. I think that's reasonable, don't you?
Is it possible that the original I guess that's my question that maybe we established and I'm just forgetting, but isn't it possible that is there any because we've never talked to the notary, is it possible that even something like that could have taken place on a different day? Like, if they have, like, a connection to one another, is it possible that he did the affidavit and then he thought about it a while and was like, "I kinda wanna get this on video," or someone suggested to him that he should get it on video, and then there's time to transcribe the affidavit, but the genuine affidavit was handwritten and they wanna preserve that as
That is
genuine.
definitely a possibility. Yeah,
Okay.
because and again, there's all these like outside and not even outside the box, but when you think in practical terms, like in my mind, is like, oh, I always think of like, how would I do it, right?
Right.
And it's like I'm interviewing you. I know I've been doing this for 10 years, almost 11. I know that when I'm talking to somebody, if they're like, oh, well, come back tomorrow and I'll sign the affidavit, or come back tomorrow and I'll talk to you then.
Yeah.
That no, there won't. Like you do,
Right.
like you do it now. Why
Yeah.
that's why I carry everything with me so I can take care of everything right
But if
now.
it was his if he wanted to do it and he contacted a notary, and especially if it's someone he has a personal relationship with,
Yeah.
then the timeline becomes much more flexible.
Right. Yeah. And also like even if that wasn't the case, even if it was, similar to my situation, because I do things that way from just years of experience doing it, doesn't mean everybody else does. So I think that's a very to me, everything happened at once. But yeah, absolutely could have been help me do this affidavit. I'm gonna swear it out, sign it, everything. And then, a week later is like, hey, I think I should I want to
Like,
record a
what if they
video
don't
too.
believe what if they don't believe it was me? What if
Right.
that's not enough? What if they need to hear me say the words or see me in this case, actually see me say the words? I want there to be no question. And again, that takes us back to the speculation of like, is that his priority or could that be an outside force priority? Like, no, no. I don't want there to be any question about whether or not you were under
Yeah.
duress or da da da, that like I want you on video. So yes, it could be that there's a third party eliciting that. Let me read just the other ones about this specific thing. Um, this is from Marnie. We'll get to some other comments and questions of Marnie's, but Marnie says more of an observation, but it's likely the notary was assisting Chris in making the videos. So there are a number of ways for him to be reading the statement without having obvious papers in his hands. If the statement was indeed on paper, it could have been on a stand next to the camera lens. If not, maybe the recording was made on the notary's phone or laptop's webcam while Gerald/Chris read the statement by scrolling the screen on his own phone or her laptop screen. It sounds like the scrolling thing of him having control of it is
You can see his hands.
unlikely
He's
because
not
you can see his
scrolling
hands.
anything. Yeah.
Um, Nancy said, would a notary have a teleprompter so someone can read their statement while looking at the camera? I could also see it being recorded with a webcam on a computer. Thank you again, Nancy. Everybody kind of had that similar idea. A thought about kicking over the we'll get to the kicking over the lamp. Sometimes you guys mesh two different ideas into one
Yeah.
comment. So that's that one. So yeah, it sounds like a lot of people kind of thinking along the same lines. And then some people thought maybe he memorized it. Maybe he memorized it. Zenat thought, well, maybe he was felt a little stilted because he was memorizing it. And I saw that someone thought it was possible too that could have happened. Valerie thought maybe that could have happened. I will say, in my opinion, I don't think he didn't sound to me like he was stiltedly repeating what he had memorized. It felt
Yeah, I
like
didn't think
I
so
would
either.
say he was reading, but I mean,
Nor was it free flowing thought. I don't think.
no,
Like he wasn't
absolutely
just
not.
drawing from the memories of what happened. I don't think that was like he was
No,
definitely.
the affidavit is first. The reading of the affidavit is second, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And you're gonna hear on Sunday too. There's even more. Like I just do not know what to think about this whole the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like it's just such a strange thing. And the more and more we I poke at it, the more and more I'm like, well, there's a lot of inaccuracies here, more
Mm,
so than, for example, and someone had pointed this out to me, and then I went back and looked at it, and like, yeah, that's a good point. And we talk about it a little bit on Sunday's episode too, but like, he says he doesn't say that he hit Liz over the head in the car specifically, but what he does say is, I got mad and I hit her with the club, and then she got out and ran, which indicates so it was in the car. And so there's a couple things. One, there's no blood found in the car. Two,
yeah.
how do you
Oh,
swing this
that's yeah.
thing
The
in
physics
that
of
little
that.
car
No,
so hard
you
and
don't.
wide? You couldn't.
You don't.
And so it's like, that can't be right. It can't be.
No, I agree.
Like, it doesn't make sense. So then, like, where is so there's all kinds of things like that that are really bugging me about the whole thing. But then you go back to but why?
But why?
But why? So then, there was the kind of we were working theories around, well, maybe somehow Shaky was involved in like threatening or pushing him to do this. I think the fact that I was leaning more towards maybe this really was guilty conscience and nobody really had to be threatening him. He could have just been like, I'm just going to leave other people out of it and just tell a version that only involves me because I have this guilty conscience about it. But then when there's all these like provably false inaccuracies in it, it's like, well, that doesn't make sense either. So then I'm back to like why was he persuaded to do this? And it's and I know like the prosecution, like they're what they argued was, well, somebody from Chris's team could have been pushing him to do this, but that doesn't make sense either, like because they obviously would know the details of the crime, and I don't know who in his team would possibly do that, and also like the way that it had to get to his team to be useful. Like if you're going to do that, you're going to make arrangements in a way that you're going to make
Make it
sure that
easy.
it gets in. Yeah.
Yes, that's a great point. That's a great point. Yeah, and I guess I didn't. And we'll get back into these listener comments and questions in a second. But that was one thing that I didn't. Again, I haven't had time to really marinate with this stuff and really think about it. So I'm really speaking more off the cuff. I listened to the episode twice, and the idea of, well, it couldn't have been under duress because then they would have just killed him as soon as he finished recording the tape. that Dr. Jackson was saying, like, first of all, I defer to her 1,000%. Like, I don't know the case at all. She knows the case so well. You know the case so well. So I mean, absolutely no disrespect. I guess in the moment that I was listening to that, I didn't necessarily. I mean, I think it makes sense that you wouldn't want to risk that person telling someone that they had, oh my God, this person made me record this thing under duress and da 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 da. Why wouldn't you just end that person's life as soon as you got what you needed? I don't, my personal opinion is I don't necessarily feel like that has to be true. I don't feel I feel that someone could have coerced or threatened uh, Gerald into doing this and also felt very comfortable letting him walk away, so to speak, after getting what he needed. If you're scared enough that you're doing this at all, the person that is doing this to you may feel very confident that you are going to keep your word and that you know what's going to happen to you or to someone you care about if you do say to someone, "Hey, I was coerced into making this video that's not real." You know what I'm saying? Like, it felt
Yeah.
to me that if that you wouldn't necessarily, the argument that it couldn't be coerced because they would have just killed him right there. I feel that is, I don't necessarily agree. I feel that you could let that person go even if you plan to kill them later and be like, "Yeah, he's not gonna say anything. Like, I'm good."
Yeah, and I can see that again, like everything is so baffling to me because while at the same time, like it would cause all kinds of other problems too, right? Like if he records a confession and gets shot right there,
Right,
like there's metadata, like that's
right.
obviously going to look right. So it doesn't really make sense to kill it. But then also like without worrying about them saying something, but then to be like, okay, now I'm going to trust you to go find a person to give it to them, and I'm going to trust that that person's going to deliver. Like that's a lot too. Like it's
Right.
all and then, like I said, when and I'm sure there's questions about that Roger Shannon testimony, but and also speaking of testimony, but as I'm getting more of the PCR testimony and reading through it, I want to mention too. So at the PCR, Gerald Matthews' mother testifies.
Okay.
Um, and her testimony was that he didn't have the gap in his teeth until after 2001 because that was from an injury that he sustained in prison. Um, so that was kind of which by the way, the gap in the tooth isn't really necessary to be a part of this. It just kind of fits into to the Chris that Larry mentioned. But so that testimony exists. But I also would point out that I just did it. It took not very much work to find old pictures of him when he was a child with that gap in his tooth. So she was not telling the
So
truth.
that's very strange.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
the
I guess she's just
prosecution,
protecting her son. She's protecting her son. She wouldn't, if there's anything she can do to help it not come back on him that he's responsible for this, perhaps she felt that that was
yeah.
something
Well,
she
and the
needed to do.
prosecution put her on to put that testimony up as to counter
Right.
the confession, right?
Right.
And it was like because part of their argument was, and you have Larry Brooks said this person that he knows, this Chris he knows, has a gap in his teeth, and look at this gap in his tooth, and she's like, he didn't have that gap in his tooth until he was in prison later, didn't exist. But I mean, like very easily you can like go there like her
Well, thank you,
her
prosecution, for giving me one more reason to think you're full of shit.
right.
I mean,
And
if it's
and and,
that easy
and
to disprove, it's like, what are you doing?
to be
That's so
fair,
scummy.
they could have just they could have just assumed she was telling the. I mean, you can go, but if you like find the Facebook page and find where she posts a in memoriam to her son with old pictures when he was a kid, and he's got the same giant gap in his teeth. It wasn't hard to find.
That feels like
You
par
know,
for the course to me.
yeah, yeah.
And
So
it's
just
disappointing
anybody
that
that
no one
somebody in
was
the
able
chat
was
said,
just able to go, "Could you identify this?" I mean, bless her heart, like, I'm not saying a mom doesn't look out for her son. I don't fault her for lying if, I'm assuming let's say she was not telling the truth. I mean, if there's a scenario in which somehow he has the gap in his teeth, he gets braces, which are very expensive, but he gets braces and then that's rectified, but then his tooth is chipped or something in an injury. That feels like a stretch, but if that's what happened, I totally super apologize for accusing a mom of lying about her son who, I feel terrible saying that. It but with the bare facts as as you've suggested, I don't fault a mother for trying to protect her son. I do fault a prosecutor for saying, "I think we can just let's just go ahead and say he didn't have that gap. I don't know
Well,
that.
yeah, I don't know, and again, I
Mm,
didn't go much further than that. The only reason I brought it is somebody in the chat just mentioned that there was, if you're like Googling, there's like there's a couple newspaper articles that mention that testimony, so like that's readily available in the public
yeah.
that was said. So I just want to point like it doesn't appear that that was truthful testimony. Like maybe there's some weird scenario, but when you look at it, it's like it's the exact same gap that he has in his like booking photos from later when he has the gap.
This is a
It's
very
the same.
convenient
It's in the
thing to
same
not
place.
bother to check
Yeah.
because it benefits you, you know? It just
Mhm.
seems very shoddy work no matter how you cut it. Just real quick, I wanna touch on the address thing because I know you and Dr. Jackson did talk about that a little bit, and I believe that was one where, you had sort of done a deeper dive into that than Dr. Jackson had in terms
Yeah.
of the idea of, like, why the address was what it was. Mo had a contribution to that this week. Mo says, "More a thought than a question. A theory regarding the address Roger Shannon used was that he had possibly done work on the property. You mentioned that it's a nice home, and my amateur sleuthing led me to a Chicago Tribune article from 2020 that mentioned Shannon had worked in construction. He could have used the address of a home where he was doing work and possibly shipped items to previously. Of course, it's assuming the house had construction and Shannon had worked for them, but it popped into my head as an explanation for the randomness, quote unquote, of the address."
Yeah, I don't think so because he was a contractor in the Chicago and Gary area, nowhere near Indianapolis. I don't think he I think he said he was there visiting his brother when he mailed this.
Yeah.
Um, and his brother I doesn't seem to have any connection to that house either. Maybe his brother, I don't know. It's weird, but that's a big part of what I'm going to be doing over this break is chasing down a lot of these leads I've been talking about. Like I'm going to try to talk to Roger Shannon. I'm going to try to talk to the person who owns that house. I've
Yeah, I wonder
tracked
if it's
that
just
person down to
totally
see.
random. Because I know
It's
you said that you thought it was strange, like, well, it is a real address and it's a specific address, but if we're thinking of it in terms of, he doesn't. Yeah, I don't know what the utility is of, like, just basically throwing a dart on a, white pages. I know that's not a thing anymore, but, like, you can get a real address. It doesn't have to be 123 Main Street
right.
00012. If you're gonna give a fake address, giving a complete fake address seems just about as logical to me as just making something up out of whole cloth. But it's true that, like, if that's ever going to be followed up on, you really wouldn't want to have a connection to it because then it could still trace back to you and you're trying to be anonymous. So then I was like, well, then it just seems like it could be like totally random, but it is a real address because he like just decided to pick an address. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't know why it just strikes me as so odd that it's like go down, into the subdivision, down a cul-de-sac to, is that type of address. It's not
Yeah.
like an address off like a main road or something like that. It's like it's such a specific address in like a neighborhood like that. I don't know, something
Yeah.
about it. There's got to be some connection. There has to be.
Yeah. Well, maybe you'll find out what it is. And I also haven't read the kind of ambling, confusing full statement either. So
Yeah.
I'm not equipped to talk about that in any detail at all. Um, but I get why that's like a bee in your bonnet for sure. And it will be very satisfying if you're able to get some sort of answer that kind of helps clarify that.
Well, I just want one thing to make sense, like from beginning to the video's weird, the note is weird, the how it was delivered. It's like every little thing is like, what is happening? My OCD brain is not it does not caring for this at all.
Yeah,
That none of the dots
I
connect.
don't blame you. Will you just okay, and then yeah, because I saw the people in the chat were wondering about this too, this idea of being coerced or being threatened and then having the way that it gets to the right people be so kind of all over the place. Can you just refresh our memory of what the like do like what how much do we know about the direct Gerald to first person who gets it? That's the
Okay, yeah.
notary? Like, could
No. Well,
who's the most immediate, like, Gerald needs to get this to someone, who is that?
that is Roger Shannon.
That's
So
Roger Shannon.
Roger Shannon says Gerald comes to him and wants to rent an apartment from him, and he's like, no, I'm not renting to you. He's an ex-con, he doesn't have a job, and all these reasons he's not renting to him. And he says, well, do you have any work? And he's like, yeah. So he hires him as day labor. So he's just like, he only knows this guy by doing day labor for him. And then one day he comes with this leather portfolio type thing and says, "Here, if anything ever happens to me, make sure this gets into the right hands. I just need you to promise me you'll do that." He says he does. That's point of contact one, besides the notary that helped him put it together, is he gives it to Roger Shannon, this guy that he barely knows. And
Yeah, I don't
then
believe that.
after he dies, and again, like, that's strange too, because Roger Shannon says, he does, he was a day labor type of guy, and it was like he'd show up some days and he wouldn't show up others. He'd pay him, and then he would disappear for a while. And so he hadn't been around for a couple of weeks, and he didn't think anything of it. And then he, like, weirdly says how, well, I got this notification on my phone that he was murdered from, like, a news app or something, which I still find super weird,
Mm.
especially in Gary at that time. Um, and then he decided that he needed to do the right thing and get this out to all the right people, which he does, not from home, but he does when he's traveling to Indianapolis visiting his brother. That's when he decides he's going to mail all the stuff out.
Yeah, that all again, and of course, again, utter speculation. And I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that Mr. Shannon is a bad person or a bad actor or has connections to nefarious deeds or anything like that. Only taking just all of that on its face, it does sound like obfuscation. It sounds like that's not the story. And whatever the story is, he is telling a different one to protect someone, whether that's himself, whether it's himself and a family member, whether it's, I don't know. It just, that does seem to me that there's going to be some direct reason that he has this item. And if, but I don't know, like, did anyone look to see the like actually like, okay, cool, well, this is a pretty big deal, we have a confession that you've handed us that is of someone confessing to 5 murders. I'd like to see his work records. Like, I'd like for you to prove your relationship to him, just for the
Yeah.
sanctity of the truth, for us to feel very confident in, like, where this came from. I'm sure you can understand. You know what I'm saying? Like, just to try to get some foundational connection of, like, oh, well, he did actually work for him on and off. And, I
Yeah.
don't know.
He was asked some of those questions on the stand, and he says that the way he did it is when he had guys like that, he paid him $100 cash a day.
Which is totally possible. Totally possible.
And there was a big long, like I said, everything gets, like, drawn out in that testimony, but he's like, it doesn't matter. That's for the day. So if we get done in 3 hours, you get $100. If we get done in 12 hours, you get $100. It's just cash. So there aren't any, like, specific records of him working there, which, like, is like, I'm sure is probably how it was done. Like I said, there's nothing to indicate that Roger Shannon is doing anything nefarious, but also there's a lot to indicate that this story we're getting isn't the story.
Right. And again, if what it comes down to is, again, I am totally basing this off of the tiny amount of information I have, whether or not it's all correct or not, but in hearing those affidavits and people being so concerned about coming forward because of one of the parties involved, that once you start looking at things through that lens, it's very easy to forgive anyone for obfuscating to
Yeah.
protect their own lives or to protect the lives of their loved ones. Of course, like, he's a good guy who wants to do the right thing, but he has a connection to this person. Like, if he's, if there's anything tied up in that at all, he's not going to want to put anyone in danger. So he's just going to keep pushing away whatever that connection is, or the thing that it would be threatening to him.
Yeah, that's what it seems to me. Is it's like, I want to make sure this gets in the right hands while also trying to keep myself out of it as much as I possibly can.
Totally, which
Yeah.
is completely understandable. It just makes it hard when it just makes it hard because you want to do the right thing, but there's also all these questions around it, which makes it easy for someone to poke holes and say, well, this doesn't matter. We can't back this up. Let's not worry about it.
Well, and you can just see why it became a problem for Chris in his appeal, because it would be one thing if it's like, this guy gave a confession, it matches every bit of forensic evidence, and we know exactly what the circumstances were when he recorded it, and we know who he gave it to, and it's a little weird how it got to him, but it's like, well, the confession is odd. He's reading something. We can't figure out how he's reading it. It doesn't fit the forensic evidence. And we don't know the story about how he gave it to this guy doesn't make sense. And the way the guy mailed it, it's like the whole thing. It's like, it's really hard to hang your hat on.
Yeah, and it doesn't match. It doesn't match what other people have said
Right.
happened. Oof. Um, Marnie says, why would it be strange for Gerald slash Chris to refer to one of the victims as Sheila rather than Renee so many years later? If that video had been made in 2000, maybe that would be suspicious. But someone involved in a quintuple homicide would probably have noticed any media reporting and could well have learned her government name from the government sources that way. So if you're exposed to the media long enough and everyone is referring to Renee as Sheila, then you just I'm now I'm extrapolating what Marnie's saying, but ostensibly you would say that because that's the easier name to identify her by for the purposes of this so long after the fact, right?
Yeah. My problem with it is the weird inconsistency. So there's he says it in a way like I know her, right? Because it's like I was with Liz and Sheila, and then it was Amsky, his girl, and some other white lady, right? So like he's indicating that the source of the information wasn't from the media or some other, because all those places would have also listed Angela Renee and Suzanne, their names as well. So
Mhm.
it's like it's a term. The problem for me is the fact that he names two of the victims and doesn't know who the other two were, which indicates, okay, well, he knows their name because he knows them, but then he doesn't. So then in that circumstance, it's why doesn't, if he knows her, then why isn't he using her actual name? And there could be more, like we said, like all of her friends and family knew her as Renee. We don't know, like, because we know that Liz and Sheila didn't know each other. So you can kind of extrapolate from that, well, maybe if Chris Stokes or Gerald Matthews knew one of them, that he knew Liz, and then maybe Liz was like, yeah, and this is Sheila.
Mhm.
So I mean, there's possibilities there.
Cuz he
It
doesn't he
just
also doesn't say Elizabeth, for example,
right,
right? He
yeah.
says Liz.
He says Liz, but I don't think there's a world where he knows both of. I mean, it's possible. Obviously, people know people all over the place, but Liz and Sheila didn't roll in the same circles. They weren't friends. They didn't know each other, so they're not like a package deal where I always hang out with Liz and Sheila together. That's not a thing. So if he's like, I know Liz, well, then if he just knew Liz, he would have just met Sheila Renee that night, and since Liz just met her, maybe all of her friends call her Renee, but maybe she introduces herself as Sheila to
Yeah.
new people.
Yeah.
So like I can always tell when someone met me by what they call me. If somebody refers to me as Robert, they met me when I was in. That's how I introduced myself to everyone when I lived in Colorado in the late
Mm.
'90s, because I thought it was more sophisticated than Bobby, which is what everyone before that knew me as.
Mhm.
To anybody that knew me since like 2003, I'm Bob, right? So I went from
Right.
Bobby to Robert to Bob, and
Yep.
and that was based on how I introduced myself throughout the years.
Yeah, I definitely get that. Yeah, I mean, I guess there, yeah. Just to circle back on this, there's no indication that Gerald knew. I'm sorry, I'm blanking. Is it Marie? Whose house was it that the both women were at?
Michelle.
Michelle. I'm so sorry. Apologies to Michelle. Um, she knew them both, so you could say if this other person also, if they knew Michelle, then there's possible that they would also know these other two women from separate circles. But there's no
But in that
indication
case,
that
it would
that.
be Michelle referred to her as Renee.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. Marnie also says, why would an interaction with Shaky or anyone else need to be involved in triggering the creation of the confession video or lead to the omission of other names in it? A guilty conscience would seem to me to be plenty of motivation to get something off his chest if he thought his days might be numbered for whatever reason, regardless of whether that reason was connected to the crimes in question or not. In a culture where the cops are the enemy and snitching isn't kosher, omitting the names of anyone who is not already dead from this statement would seem to be the smart choice.
Yeah, and that I think that's a really good point. As I've thought more and more about this over the last week, that if I've looked at this originally from the perspective of, if there's a guilty conscience, it's a guilty conscience for the murders. But I've tried to look at it from a different angle these last couple days. In that, what if it is just a simple case of guilty conscience, and the guilty conscience part of it is that Chris Bynum was wrongfully convicted for it. right? So it wasn't like I just want to make sure these victims get justice, but
Right.
it's like I don't want this guy serving the rest of his life in prison for my time. And that I think opens up a whole new realm of possibilities of what's going on here. And I'm not saying any of these are the case, but it could be the fact that he was he was connected and involved somehow, maybe loosely connected to the whole thing, and he knows who did it. And maybe that's where he's like, well, I can, something, if something happens to me, I at least want to make sure that this guy gets off. So I'm just going to take the information that I know or I have heard, and I'm just going to put it all on me because I'll be dead anyway.
And then give it
And
to someone you don't know very well? A thing that says you killed 5 people that you give to someone you barely know because it might happen to you? You might get killed? That guy could have just taken it right to the police and been like, by the way, this guy thinks
yeah,
I'm gonna hold on to this. No, I watched it, and he says he killed these people. Go get him."
yeah, and that's
That's
a
a
whole
huge
other
risk.
element of this that we haven't discussed is exactly what you just said. That risk of, yeah, the whole idea is the authorities get this after I'm dead, so it won't matter. But you're risking someone like, because yeah, imagine Roger Shannon day one watches that video and
Yeah,
he's like, this dude just confessed to murder. I'm
yeah,
taking this directly to the police.
100%.
Yeah, it's
I don't buy it.
but
With
but
the
that's the key.
information that as we've been presented it, I don't buy it.
Well, but I think though that argument factors in any of these scenarios.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Well, the
whether he
fact
was
yeah. But
whether he
that's
was
what I'm saying, then
threatened.
but that's what I'm saying, it factors into if poor Mr. Shannon got pulled into this also, maybe it's not even Gerald who gave him the tape. Maybe someone was like, "Hey, you're gonna take this. Don't worry about it. I'll let you know when to reach out. Don't worry about it. I will keep your daughter safe. Nothing bad will happen to her. Don't even worry about it. When the time comes, you will get my text." The thing that's, "Oh, I got a notification he died." It was a news app. What if it's just
Yeah.
a text that says, "Take it in,"
Yeah,
and you're
there's
like, "Oh
so
shit.
many
Okay,
there
this
are
thing I have
s
to do." You know what I mean?
there are so many different possibilities that, or maybe it was given to him after he died, or maybe he took it to Detective Donald and said, "Hey, I got this. I need you to turn it in." And threats came from that side. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not saying any of this happened, but
Yeah.
that's the issue with this is
It leaves it wide open to your imagination.
there's so many possibilities. And it's just, for me, I'm just trying to get back to like the original. It was like this question was asked, the original, like, what was the motivation to make the video and write the confession to begin with? Was it that I was threatened? Was it truly a guilty conscience? If it was a guilty conscience, was it guilty about the murders or was it guilty about somebody else? Because if you listen to it, that's what he says. That someone that he says that he heard that this Chris that he killed 5 people and he's doing time for something I did. Like what reads out of that affidavit where the guilt comes, if it's real, is about the fact that Chris Bynum is doing his time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that all connects all these dots, but I think it's at least worth noting to think about.
Which, let's just close this loop real quick on the notary side. Again, is a notary is not like your lawyer or like a priest
Right.
or even a doctor, right? I mean, if you hire a notary and you're like, "Hey, take this down. I killed 5 people." Why wouldn't the notary be like, "Thank you very much. I have no obligation to your privacy whatsoever. I will go
Right.
to the police today."
Right. So you almost have to assume that the notary's a friend or something. Because, yeah, they have no obligation. It's not like a lawyer or a private investigator or somebody who is, like, bound by confidentiality. They're not. And it's also why, like, to me, like, that's the key. The key is, like, tell me what the fuck was happening in that room. Like, what happened?
And, like, except you start to go down madness lane when you're like, "Wait a minute, so now I'm suggesting that, like, this puppeteering mastermind has all these different people, like it's The Sopranos?" I'm using that example because that's a show I've watched. I could also say The
Yeah.
Wire, also a great show. But the idea of someone being like, "Now let's see. this person owes me money. I'm going to have them be the notary. This person owes me something. I'm going to make them be the person who takes it to, like, that's a lot of conspiracy. That's a lot of people keeping their mouth shut about a very specific thing, so that you can like orchestrate this perfect story in your
Yeah.
mind that's going to
And I
get that confession out there.
and truthfully, like the more and more we pull at this string, the more and more I think that's all too complicated. And that's why like what
Yeah.
I was just talking about a second ago is why like I bet just flat ass guess. My gut tells me that it was something more like this. There is some situation he feels like he's gonna die. He does have this guilty conscience about Chris. I think he was probably I want to make very clear. This isn't even a educated guess. It's just a gut feeling that he's probably loosely connected, knows enough about what happened, where he's like, well, I'm going to make this thing. I don't think that he then packaged it and randomly gave it to Roger Shannon. I think more likely it was something like if this Talia is a friend of his and she helps him notarize and everything, it's like if something happens, give this to someone else and tell them they need to tell this story. And I think it may be something like that, where it's literally just him has a guilty conscience, puts this plan together, and the reason nothing makes sense is because it's not the truth. Like the way the whole process worked is just not what really happened, is what I think.
I don't know. That's a lot to take on if you don't actually have knowledge that, I mean, if you didn't do it and you just think if something happens to me, at least I can help out this guy and
Well,
take the rap for these.
I don't think it's just like something happened to the guy. In my scenario, he was involved. Like it would have been like he was there, he was part of it. Like if there
Yeah.
was like a legit investigation, he would
Yep.
have got charged with murder too,
Okay.
even if he wasn't the one who pulled the trigger.
Okay. All right. Zenith had also asked if Jim Clementi had perhaps seen the Gerald confession video and if he had any would have any thoughts on body language and speech and stuff. It seems like that would be so much harder to read. Well, first of all, you need the baseline, right?
Yeah.
You need the baseline. I'm trying to remember the things that have been drilled into me over listening to this podcast for a million years.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have the baseline, and it's got to get weird when someone's reading. Like that seems like that changes a whole lot in terms of anything you might be able to perceive.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question, Jim hasn't looked at it, but like part of the reason was because I know the limitations of this. Like if you heard like even my analysis, you didn't hear like Nikki talked a little bit about like the hands and stuff like that. Like I didn't get into anything that involves like the way you sound, other than it sounded like it was reading, or any kind of like body language clues or anything like that, because there's no baseline. He's reading, none of it. So I was trying to look at things that I can pick up on that are tangible, like I talked about, like getting the different versions of the word "there" correct, but then using terrible grammar in it. Like to
Yeah.
me, like that's something that, okay, there's a
Yeah, I think
connection
that's
there
really
that tells me
interesting.
that like
Mhm.
probably like that's something that he said, but the person writing it has better English skills than the person who said it, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, just a couple last things. Sarah said, when did Gerald Matthews move to Gary from Illinois? I hadn't realized he wasn't a local. I don't know if we have any further information on that.
I don't.
Okay.
I
And
well, sorry, I just panicked for a minute, and because for
yeah.
some reason I just realized my
I mean, don't let
Rodecaster
me reassure
isn't
you. I
recording.
100% could tell that you were just like not really sure what I'd asked or said. Your
Well,
game face is garbage.
the Rodecaster's not recording, so I was really like, oh, where can I
How bad of a situation are we in here?
It's not that bad. Just my
Okay.
so we'll just say this, and Erica, you can just leave all that in.
Uh-huh.
It's a follow up, right? We're talking. If this episode didn't sound the best, it's because I had to pull the audio off of StreamYard. That's why.
Okay. My side's gonna sound great.
Yeah.
No, Sarah had said she was surprised that she did not know that Gerald Matthews was not from Gary, and in fact was from Illinois. She was wondering if we knew when he had moved to Gary.
So the thing is, you have to realize if you look at a map where Gary's at, it's a stone's throw from Illinois. It's like right there on the border. So like, you could live in Chicago and hang out in Gary. It's that close.
Got it. And then Heather says, will there be an interview of Bernard Carter at some point? I would like to hear why he let this much expletive go on and still decided to prosecute Chris and let the murders continue to trek the streets. Let the murderers continue to walk the streets, essentially.
I would assume no. That was not the original prosecutor. I think that's either the one that dealt with the appeals or is currently in office. But no, I mean I wouldn't expect that. No, I
Yeah.
guess is the short answer, especially
Yeah.
because I see it's 9:01 and you said you really had a hard out today.
I do. I think this was a really great conversation. We missed Zach. He always has such valuable input, and so I'm sorry that we didn't get his perspective. Maybe we'll get a chance to catch up with him a little bit next follow up. But this was really good, and I such great input from our listeners as we continue to try to pull this string that just makes the whole shape be even harder to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And we'll continue to do that. And we're going to do a little bit more of it. That's going to, add a little more information and also maybe confuse things a little more because
Oh
it's
boy.
adding more. But we're going to get on Sunday's episode some very accurate, verifiable information about the ball field crime scene.
Okay.
I've mentioned this before. So listener Colin Shortland, he's from the UK. He's been a longtime listener and had done a fantastic job of analyzing that scene. And when he shared with me what he had found and how he found it, I had a conversation with him. I was like, look, I don't want to take what you gave me and then try to turn it into me explaining it. So instead, I invited Colin to join me on the podcast. So what you're
Nice.
going to hear on Sunday is it's just really a fly on the wall conversation. So it's Colin got on the stream with me and on our little Zoom setup here and shared his screen with the photos, and we walked through his entire analysis of that scene, and it's pretty shocking. I mean, flat out the way that scene, where things were at and how things broke down at that ball field crime scene, the way it was described at trial, which is the way the crime scene investigator described it, and I
Yeah.
believe like is completely wrong, and not maybe this isn't this could mean. I mean, Colin does a fantastic job of breaking all that down. So so that's what we're going to do on Sunday, and then we'll be talking about it on Monday in the follow up, which will air next Friday after the Christmas holiday. So we'll talk to you guys next week.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys. That's what Zach says, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Bye, guys.
Okay. I don't know what the. Okay. So this is Erica. This is the end. Erica,
What
I would hit
happened?
stop
Hi,
on my
Erica.
audio, but it's. So here's the weird thing. I hit record. I know that I hit record because on like 2 or 3 occasions, I glanced over to see how far, like what the time was, because
Yeah.
it shows like a big red timer on my on my roadcaster, like how far into the recording you are.
Yeah.
And then I looked back and it's just not recording. So it shut itself off at some point. So
I've had that
um
happen too just with GarageBand, for example, but
yeah.
that's
So
not
as
great.
far as I'm gonna go ahead and end the stream right now so I can just talk to Janet
Okay.
off the air a little
Okay.
bit before she's got to run. So we love you guys. We're
Thanks,
ending the stream.
everybody. You're
Bye
the best.
guys.